Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Tom Murphy Show. Tonight we are very blessed to have a special guest and an old friend of the show on tonight. We have County Executive George Latimer. George, how are you, pal?
Tom, it's good to be with you. As always,
yeah,
as always.
It is. It's nice to have a friendly face here again. George, the last time, you've had a lot of jobs in government, but they've all been kind of legislative jobs. Now you're in the big chair. You're a county executive. You're the chief executive officer of Westchester County. How's it different? How's it playing?
Well, it is very different from being a legislator, and I think the important thing is that you draw from all the different experiences that you've had in your life. You do this as mayor as well. Right. I've served on a city council. I've been in the county legislature, chaired it, both houses of the state legislature, and all those things give you a different element of what public policy is. It's almost like a big jigsaw puzzle, and you get a piece and a piece and a piece, and you're trying to get enough pieces so you can figure out what the puzzle says or what the picture looks like. Some of it you get from, in my case, from my business experience, the 20 years I spent in business that overlaps the beginning of my years in public office. But it's a tougher job in that you have more responsibility, more things that have to be decided by you. As a legislator, you vote on bills, you advocate for ideas, you vote on budgets, you do constituent service. It's a pretty defined number of things. In this case, the county government is a $1.9 billion budget. There's 4,200 employees. We have functions that range from running a nature park to treating sewerage to incarcerating prisoners. Right. So with that kind of diversity, you're challenged every day. On the other hand, you can actually have more tangible accomplishments. We're working on 2 or 3 things right now that when they're finished, physical construction things, that you'll see something of positive benefit. And you'll be able to look at it, point it, touch it, and that's gratifying because after X number of years of being a legislator, it's just about ideas, you don't feel the same sense of, all of this was worth something. Hopefully we'll see that as we start to open the Sprain Ridge Pool, right. Reopen the Miller House and West Help housing for 74 people, all those things.
Yeah, but I think people don't understand about the county provides a lot of the sinew for government. Like you talked about jails and police academy and the fire academy, stuff that a local municipality could never be able to do on its own. So I think it's important to note that.
The county government's a regional government, and because of that, the government that a person sees every day, since we're in the LMC community, you see the Village of Larchmont, well, the Joint Sanitation, Village of Larchmont, Town of Mamaroneck, or the Village of Mamaroneck, pick up your garbage. Right. And then what either of those entities do is bring the garbage to a transfer station. Then the county picks it up and separates material recovery for the recyclables, brings the rest to Charles Point for the burn plant. And the cost of the garbage collection and disposal is heavier on the back end. Right. From the point of regional transfer station to the point of disposal, that's the more expensive part of it, but you don't see it. You don't see the sewer treatment system. Right. Now, we all drive down the Post Road. We see the sewer treatment plant, that is a magnificent looking building from the outside, right at the front of Harbor Island. If you go further south, they have a similar building that's not far from Salesian High School.
Right, in New Rochelle.
Right, off of 5 Islands Road. And then you have sewer treatment plants in Portchester and Rye as well, on this side of the county, a number on the other side. But the average person doesn't see that regional function and say, oh, that's the county government at work. But what we do backs it up because you don't want the Village of Mamaroneck and the town and the other village and the city of Rye and Rybrook and all these communities trying to get rid of their garbage individually, or all of these communities trying to deal with the once in a lifetime bomb squad incident. Right. So we have a county bomb squad, and we send that bomb squad in, and a SWAT team and rape crimes unit. Yeah. We send them in for the kind of specialty needs that every community doesn't have. It costs money to have the equipment. It costs money to train people and to identify people who can have this expertise. But we do that as a benefit because it would cost much more if you asked each village and town to do it.
Either they wouldn't be able to afford to do it or they just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't happen. Lately in the news, there's been talk about, Con Ed is saying it's going to have a moratorium on hooking up new customers to gas service. And I guess this is because their pipe size doesn't have the capacity, they're saying, for any more gas. And I know there's a lot of development going on. There's enough in the Village of Mamaroneck, believe me. But there's huge projects in White Plains and huge projects in New Rochelle and in Yonkers. How is this going to work?
Well, it could be very devastating. I think that's what we're most concerned about. The moratorium would stop any new gas hookups, natural gas hookups, anywhere in Westchester County, with the exception of a handful of communities at the northern tier. All of the main communities of the county are serviced by a pipeline, the Tennessee Pipeline, that enters from New Jersey into the I-287 corridor, basically. Right. And if you wind up with a moratorium, then somebody's planning to build 50 units of affordable housing. They don't have a permit request in yet. You're out of luck. You're not going to get gas. If you're an individual homeowner and you have a piece of land, you're thinking, we were going to develop it and sell it and make some money. Well, if all of those wheels aren't in place by the date of the moratorium, then you stop and you're not sure that you can get a gas hookup in there. And it's, multiplied out by as many people as there are, all across the county. But the problem that we're dealing with is we don't control the decisions made by the utility, but we still have to respond.
Right.
We can't just wash our hands in the multitude and say it's not us, so forget about it. So what we're trying to do is put together a game
it directly affects your residents.
Yeah, exactly. And in all the developments, I mean, you're seeing it. You have it here in Mamaroneck Village. The transit-oriented development around the proximity to the train station is revitalizing the community. You've got more jobs and more people coming in to live, to be close where they work, and that's a good thing for the economy of Mamaroneck. On the other hand, we're dealing with a situation where you can't expect to have growth if there's a moratorium, and we can't control the moratorium. So we've had to come up with sort of a voluntary plan in which we go after the major stakeholders in the county, of which the county government is one of them, but universities, colleges, hospitals, big corporate developer entities and so forth, and ask them to create a redundant system of heat so that on the coldest nights of the year you can switch off the gas that you're connected to and use that alternate heat, whatever that might be. And by doing that, that's an interruptible gas service that will allow capacity to be drawn out of the pipeline from places that might yet be hooked up to it. And so once those are hooked up, and then you can just flip a switch and you have an alternate gas, then you've answered the issue effectively.
Some furnaces are dual fuel. You can do gas and you can do oil. But the interesting thing is that Con Ed, for the past 15 years, has been encouraging people to switch over to gas heat.
They have.
Yeah.
And let's face it, gas, in the hierarchy of pollution,
gas pollutes less than oil.
It's better to use gas than oil, and nobody uses coal because that's the worst of the major fuels of that level. Now, whether we can get to the point where geothermal or solar or wind can fully take the place of natural gas, we're not there yet. But that's what in theory many are striving to. This moratorium hits us in the face, and it was announced less than 2 months in advance. There's almost no time for you to respond. So we're asking for more time and reserve the right to resolve it in court if we can't resolve it in the court of public opinion and in the court of common sense. But that's what we have to do. We have to try to see if we can do that as a county, and that's one example of leading on a county level. Whereas the legislator, I would support the initiative. Now I have to lead the initiative, and I have to make sure we actually get it done, if that can be done.
Well, good luck to you. We both know dealing with Con Ed for a long, long time. It's they're less than cooperative sometimes. You have something I read about recently to try and help the homeowners in this community of Westchester, the Property Taxpayers Protection Act.
Right. Property Taxpayers Protection Act, Tom, is a way for us to stabilize our finances in Westchester County. Without going backwards too much, when I came on board, we had a drop in bond rating. We had a decimation of our reserve fund, which is the savings account for the county. We're down to $70 million when it had been up higher than that. We had union contracts for the largest part of our workforce that were out of date and needed to be updated and renegotiated, and that was a massive task we had to tackle last year. We extended the deal we have with the Liberty Lines, the public-private partnership to run the buses, and we saved $20 million for the taxpayers over the next 5 years, $4 million a year. That was a significant improvement. But in all of this, we've looked at a situation where the county has two ways primarily to fund its business: property taxes and sales taxes, and they're about equal as revenues. Everybody hates the property tax. It is a fixed price. You can't negotiate. There's nothing you can do to reduce your tax liability. You get the bill, you have to pay it, or you ultimately run the risk of losing your house. On the sales tax side, it's a consumption tax. If I want to buy this globe, and this globe is $100 for the sake of this discussion, and I think it's too rich for my blood, I go out and I find a globe like this that's $80. Not the same quality or whatever, but workable for what my purposes are. Right. I save on taxes because it's consumable, the product that I want. And when you start to stretch it out over the county, you realize we already have the 4 major cities that are at the 8 3/8 number or higher.
Where people shop.
Well, where people shop. Yeah. So the mission then is if I can get money from a non-property tax source, then I can freeze property taxes for 2020 and 2021. And that's what's behind this. I want to be able to tell neighbors in Larchmont and Mamaroneck who are watching this, we will freeze your county property taxes for 20 and 21. It's not fake, and we're not printing money in a printing press. But we are going to ask, as part of that process, for an additional 1% in sales tax. So,
which will bring you up to the level
it'll
of
bring
White
you to the
Plains,
same level of White Plains
Yonkers.
and New Rochelle and Yonkers. We're not putting you ahead of them. You're still behind New York City. You're still behind the island. Right. And you're equal to Putnam and Rockland, which is a very reasonable thing to deal with. The important thing when you look at how the situation operates, what's it mean to you? If you wanted to buy, I'll pick this globe again. If you want to buy this globe, it's a $100 globe. Under the current circumstances, outside of those 4 major cities, you're paying $7.38 on tax for this. That's your sales tax. If you buy it after the new program that I have, which gives you a freeze in your property taxes, right? For 2 years, this globe will now cost you $108.38. $1 extra per $100 of what you buy. And because you can decide that, oh, well, the tax is too much, I'll buy a globe of $80, and that will lower what your taxes are. Most people don't drive 25, 30 miles out of their way just to shop at a marginally lower sales tax environment. If you're buying a car, if you're buying a diamond ring, if you're gutting your kitchen and putting in all new appliances, you might think about those things. But in everyday living, you gas up, and there's a certain portion of sales tax that comes from the pump. That's the cost of doing business every day. And then you decide how much of that you need. And one other point in this general sense of things, when you pay a tax in small increments, you really don't feel it. It doesn't hit you the way the home tax, the property tax hits you, because it's a lump sum situation if you finish paying your mortgage, or it increases your mortgage monthly if you are still paying a mortgage, and that's not negotiable. And the fact that it's a fixed amount of number, you and I might have houses side by side, but if our incomes are different, it doesn't matter. We pay the same property taxes because our houses of equal value. And that obviously rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So that's what we've got to solve.
And you know what, too, George? Also, there's a couple of things. Property tax is just on residents, right? You live here, you're paying property tax. But, this sales tax, if somebody comes in from Rockland County, if somebody comes in from New Jersey and has dinner here, they're paying it too. So it gets distributed.
It's a broader base of payers,
right? Yes.
And the residents who pay it may also be people that rent. Exactly. And not just poor people who rent, but wealthy people that are in market rate apartments that also have to contribute to that. So we think the sales tax is a more preferable way to property taxes. Let me just give you one metric. If we had to raise $70 million at the county, at the ratio of $5.5 million per every 1% in property taxes, we would have to raise county property taxes by 11% to raise $70 million. The same $70 million through sales tax, 0.5% gets you to $70 million. And, you think of yourself, you go holiday shopping. If you shopped in White Plains, you live in 10543, I live in 10580. Did you once in White Plains say, hey, wait a minute, charge me the Mamaroneck rate? I'm a Mamaroneck resident. Nobody does that. No, I mean, somebody does it, but very few people do it. So what it tells you is if you're going to White Plains to go to Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom's or wherever you're going, Neiman Marcus is out of my league, but if you go there and you pay an extra $1 per $100 in taxes, you've already calculated that into your buying decision. You're not going to drive 35 miles out of your way to go someplace that you weren't planning to go because there's a differential in sales tax. So I think what we've presented, because we're going to use this to fill our reserves, raise our bond rating back up, we're going to share 30% of it with municipal governments. Exactly. So you're going to get a chunk of change when you need it. Because you want to keep your property taxes down.
This helps us all.
And we're going to provide money to the town of Mamaroneck and to the school districts, both Rhine Neck and Mamaroneck, and to the village of Larchmont.
I think that's important to point out. The county gets 70% of the money. The municipalities outside of those cities get 20% of that money, and the school districts get 10% of that money.
Right.
So this is something for everyone to try and keep property taxes down.
And what it does do, I think, is it puts us on a more even keel.
Yes.
Right now, when we did this budget of last year, which was passed, it was a 2% property tax increase. We worked very hard to keep it low, but we had to do gimmicky things. And there's going to be more of that in the future if we can't get a steady revenue stream.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing, so that just so people can have some contrast. At the beginning of the discussion, you said that the county had a surplus of $70 million that you inherited.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll correct it.
I just want, so it's a $1.2 billion budget.
$1.9 billion budget. And what I described as a reserve fund, that's $70 million to handle any emergencies, down from $170 million a few years ago.
I want to put that in perspective to let people know what you inherited. You know, the Village of Mamaroneck has a $36 million budget. And we have a $12 million unrestricted reserve fund. So, I mean,
significant.
It's a good reserve fund, and I appreciate having it, but I'm just trying to point out to people, you know, the unfair situation that you inherited from 8 years of neglect.
Yeah. Well, there was a philosophy in place for those prior 8 years. And I don't share that philosophy. I ran because I offered a different philosophy. We litigated this before the voters of Mamaroneck and the voters of Westchester County. I was successful. So I came in to change the direction. I don't want to raise property taxes.
I know you don't.
But I have a responsibility by law to provide a jail, to provide a probation department. The person watching this may never go to the county jail. They may never know anybody who goes to the county jail. What are my taxes going for? Well, your taxes are going for county jail.
Yeah.
Why? Because the state requires a county of our size to have a jail to incarcerate people that need to be incarcerated. Then we have a probation department. Well, why do you have that? Why are we paying people to be probation people? Because once a person is released from prison, they still have to go through a period of reorienting themselves to the society, and that's what the probation department does. Well, why do we have a public health department? Somebody who goes in and looks at all the restaurant kitchens to make sure they're clean. Or same health department, different division of it. We have somebody who is going to go out and check the water quality of every pool, public or private pool.
Or beaches.
Or the beaches, and right on down the line. We have public health clinics for people who don't have any money. They can go and get an immunization shot for them and their kids, or a flu shot, or whatever. All of those things are required functions from the state to the county. So when
they're needed functions.
And they're needed functions. They're worthwhile functions. Yeah. But I can't just say, well, you know what? The voters of Westchester County don't want to pay another dime in property taxes. They've had it. We're not going to do those things. Can't do that. So what do I have to do? I have to come up with some revenue streams to compensate for what we are trying to do, which is manage better, reduce the amount of jobs we have, but still do the function. Right. And, obviously folks who don't know, they don't read the county budget, why would they? Yeah. It's not light reading for a Friday night, but they don't know. And that's why you have, Tom, a representative form of government. Exactly. People like yourself and mine and others, both political parties, all different levels of government, we step forward and say, we want to be your representatives. If you give us the authority, we're going to try to make intelligent decisions the way you would make. And both of you and I have been in public settings 1,000 times answering questions from people at the summit, at the Larchmont Temple Brotherhood Breakfast, at the League of Women Voters, at Coffee and Conversation at the Nautilus Diner, all the places we've been in this community alone, much less in my case the other communities, to be accessible to people, to let them know this is why we're doing something and this is why it makes sense. It's the decision you would make if you were in my shoes. But as a representative, you're doing what you do professionally. You're making the money, living the life you want to live. And I get the opportunity to make those decisions, and I try to do them in harmony with what I think is for the greater good of Westchester County. And you can cast your opinions on me any time of the day or night. And then if I run for office,
you do it in November,
you could just say, look, George, don't like what you did, you're out. Yeah. And but it's difficult while you're in the middle of it. This Property Taxpayers Protection Act will be misrepresented willfully by people. They're going to want to say, I don't want him to get any credit for doing something and reversing the direction, so we're going to use numbers and articles and attitudes to attack them. And that's where experience in government helps. It helps you get through those moments so that you can get through to a conclusion.
And at the end of the day, you got to do what's right. And we know that there's going to be misinformation and abuse, but that's the price of sitting in these offices. And I'm glad you're doing it. And as the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, I hope it gets passed so that we could recognize some revenue to keep our property taxes down, because I think that's very important.
It's important, so.
I just want to touch on something that is very important to me, and I know it's very important to you because you could probably see it out your window, is Playland.
I do see it every day, and Playland is an historic facility. It's been there since 1928. I think it can have a rebirth, and I think it can be successful. It's a beautiful piece of land. We have some historic rides there, but for the prior 8 years, there was no investment because it wasn't a philosophical agreement to do that. My predecessor didn't come from this side of the county, didn't feel that it was essential for us to have a facility like this. We wouldn't build this tomorrow if we had the time and the money, but it was built by our forefathers, and it was very successful for a long, long time.
It's part of our legacy.
Right, it's part of our legacy, and we have to come up with the strategies and the management style to make it really come alive and make more money than it's making recently. I think we can do that. We have responsibility for the park through the end of the season of 2019. And then my predecessor signed a contract with a group called Standard Amusements, and Standard Amusement comes in, runs the park, lays out some capital. We're on the hook for most of the capital. Mm-hmm. We're on the hook for certain other costs. And when I look at this, I say, why is this a good deal? Yeah. I don't fault the other side because they're trying to negotiate the best deal they can.
They're trying to make money.
It's our side, my predecessor's side, that chose to make these concessions and do these things a certain way. So my sense of it is that we're in the beginning of a process of reassessing that. And if, in fact, we don't feel it's the right thing to do, then we're going to try to negotiate our way out of this. Now, all we can do unilaterally is negotiate. Yeah. We can't just walk away from it. If there's a breach in the contract, there's a procedure by which a breach is satisfied. Right. And we'll have those conversations in real time.
I mean, I just want to put in a plug. And I know you and I grew up in similar circumstances. We weren't rich kids growing up, and
far from it.
Both of us, I'm sure, spent time in Playland. We used to take when I was a kid, for being an altar boy, one of the rewards was they took us to Playland once a year, from New York City to Playland, and it was fun. But I just want to say something. For so many families in Westchester and even outside of Westchester, that's their vacation. They save up to go to Playland. You know what I mean? They're not going to the Hamptons, they're not going to
Disney World. They're
not going
to be in their backyard.
And this is what they can afford to give their kids, a daycation. Right. And we have to keep those folks in mind. Right. And not just those folks. I mean, I brought my kids there many, many times. And it's always a nice way to kill a day with your kids. They've kind of aged out now. They go without me.
Well, and then there's the next generation that follows that.
Exactly.
I just think that sometimes people understand the cost of everything, but they don't understand the value of everything. So let me play a little role reversal on here, Tom, because you do these interviews. I don't get much of a chance to do it. You've been mayor for as long as I've been county executive. I think I've seen you all over the village. I think you've tackled some tough issues. And unlike me, where I get a 4-year term, you get a 2-year term. Yeah. How are you looking at your tenure so far? And are you going to try to do this for another 2 years?
Well, thanks for asking. I think the tenure has been very successful. We've done things that move the village forward. We're in the middle right now of rezoning. In the past decade, building has kind of, the developers have had an upper hand in the village, and there's been a building boom that benefited the developer and didn't really benefit the village. At our last board meeting, we lowered the speed limits on most village streets to 25 miles per hour. We're working really hard to make the streets safer for pedestrians and for bicyclists. That's something that we heard during the campaign. And having grown up in the city and having seen people get hit by cars, kids get hit by cars when I was a kid, when a mother or a father tells me I'm afraid to let my kid play outside because the cars, now I have a responsibility to try and keep that from happening. And that was very clear to me. And I take that very seriously, and I'm trying to do that. We opened up the beach in Harbor Island Park for, year-round. I have no idea why it was closed, but now people can access their waterfront, every day, up until dusk. We've done a lot of things that are going to move this village forward. There's going to be new signs in the downtown soon. There's a new way to pay for parking meters, which I want to credit the whole board for, but particularly Trustee Potok, before he retired. He worked very hard on that, and you know, it makes it much more convenient for everybody, and it's bringing in a little more revenue from the village. And as we talked about before, it's a non-property tax revenue that you could choose either to do or to not do. So that's the kind of thing we like to see.
And you know, I see an energy in Mamaroneck Village. I'm in Mamaroneck Village just about every day. I mean, I live next door town. But you know, I have so much of my life is spent in the village, and I see an energy level that's continued to grow over the years. But Mamaroneck Avenue is booming. It's booming, and I think that's a good sign.
That's a result of many mayors over many years.
And I think it's a continuum.
Yes, it's a continuum. You know? Thank you.
But then also, I also see the development. There's a new building on the Boston Post Road where the O'Neill Funeral Home used to be. There's buildings, you know, right around Mamaroneck Avenue, Library Lane, where this used to be, and that's a sign of something good happening under your tenure.
Well, you know, that really was before me, but you know, what that really is, George, I don't know if that's really, I mean, those are apartments for people who are multi-millionaires. What we're trying to change the zoning to do is to have apartments for the people who can, you know, who are struggling to stay here. You know, not that, you know, there's anything against being successful and having a lot of money, but we're trying to build a community that's diverse. And what those buildings have done, although they're beautiful buildings, and I wish the people who live in them, you know, a lot of luck, but we're trying to, you know, not make this a community just for the rich. You know, we want to make sure that the volunteer firemen could stay here. We want to make sure that our police officers could stay here, that our teachers could stay here, that the DPW workers could stay here, that the elevator mechanics can stay here. And it's very difficult. If I had not bought in to Mamaroneck at the time I bought in, I couldn't afford to buy in now. It takes at least an income of $200,000 to buy a house in the village of Mamaroneck now, and we want to change that. And you know, we want to you know, make it less crowded. We want to keep it a village and less of a city. And that's what me and Nora Lucas ran on, and that's what we're going to run on again. I think we've made some success. So, I just want to point out we've also started doing you know, food waste recycling.
Right.
Which
that's a great step forward.
Which is a great step forward, and it is, you know, caught on, and people are using it more and more and more. And you know, just little things like that improve the quality of life and make people feel like this is a community that cares about its environment.
So since we're on the Tom Murphy show, is Tom Murphy running for mayor?
Tom Murphy is going to run for re-election. You know, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Well, good luck to both of us. We have our hands full.
Thank you, Judge. It's always a pleasure talking to you and seeing you. And until the next time, it's always, I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure, Tom.
And thank you for doing this. And that's it for tonight. We'll see you on the next edition of the Tom Murphy Show.